May 11th. Apparently, the Grizzlies are smarter than the average bear. Andrew Hahn here. It's ClipperBlog Live.
Terrible.
With us from Oceanside is DJ Foster. And calling in from Staples, Jordan Heimer. Jordan, how you doing?
Oh, I'm doing all right. I thought my mood was adequately captured by a kind of a burly gentleman that I followed out of Staples Center, and he was on his cell phone, and he was screaming to someone, "You think this is a joke? You think this is a joke? You think the Clippers are a joke?" Which I thought was hilarious. He was very upset that someone had called to make fun of him after really just one of those dispiriting losses you're likely to see.
That was a good move, using a giant burly man as a blocker to get out of Staples Center, though.
It was. It's true. I followed him out the same way I follow ambulances down Wilshire.
That's good strategy.
Jordan, why don't you share with us your thoughts from that fourth quarter?
I just, you want to kind of say, look, coaches and players understand things about these games that we, the mere fan, can't possibly see. But when the entire arena is yelling, "Why Foy? Why Foy?" I mean, people next to me, people behind me, Vinny's decision to put Foy back in for Bledsoe, Vinny's decision to stay with the reserves when the Clippers were up 8, and then watch that lead quickly go on a 10-0 run for the Grizzlies and be down 2. It was just, they played this amazingly inspirational middle 2 quarters. I mean, that place was dead in there when Eric Bledsoe came in for the first time. Clippers were down 9. Chris Paul couldn't move. He was, playing off ball, spotting up like he was Randy Foy. And then Bledsoe came in. You had these 2 quarters where the Clippers, led by the reserves, took Staples Center on a magical run. That was as loud as I've ever heard that building. That was as loud as I've ever heard any basketball building. And I grew up going to Knicks games all the time in Madison Square Garden. And it really did feel like a few key coaching decisions took the air out of that stadium and out of this game.
Before we get to the...
Sorry, how was that for a rant?
It was a much more disciplined than I thought it would be. Jordan, did it look like Bledsoe was gassed when they pulled him in the fourth quarter, that he had nothing left? I mean, he was playing a lot more minutes than we're normally used to seeing.
Look, they brought Foy back in with 3 minutes of basketball to play. Again, believe it or not, CBL listeners, I am not a professional athlete. I've never been a professional athlete. But gassed is relative, right? Okay, so gassed is yes. Eric Bledsoe was walking around with his hands on his knees during the timeout. But Randy Foy had given you nothing all game. He started the game almost attempting to play Chris Paul himself, make some moves, back guys up, find his way into the paint, but just kind of ended up, I think, taking himself out of his own game. That's not Randy Foy. That's when Randy Foy struggles, is when he tries to kind of play points and be that part of his, quote, combo guard title. And so to me, it was like, yeah, I guess he's gassed, but he's also a 21-year-old kid with 3 minutes of basketball left to play to put yourself in the Western Conference semifinals. I just think that the tired Bledsoe is still the decision.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Jordan. From the Memphis side of things, what did you see differently from them in this fourth quarter as opposed to other fourth quarters in this series?
Well, the biggest difference is that they continue to go inside a little more. I mean, Rudy Gay once again struggled, but Randolph and Gasol, who have been effective at stretches during this series, were effective in the fourth. Tony Allen played in the fourth, which hasn't happened much, and he was effective. His defense was good, maybe because with Chris Paul being kind of a step slower, all of a sudden Tony Allen could re-exert that, perimeter defense that he can play. I heard Lionel Hollins talking before the game, and he actually had these really funny comments on Tony Allen where he's saying, I hear you guys tell me that I'm not playing the best perimeter defender in the league enough, but when he turns the ball over every other possession, the defense doesn't matter all that much. Which I thought was a kind of a funny thing to say about your own player.
Right.
But regardless, I think they found the way to use Tony Allen in this fourth quarter, and it was a funky game, right? Like, if the Grizz lose that game, Rudy Gay is absolutely a scapegoat. It's still mystifying to me that 6 games into this series, Rudy Gay can't figure out how to just unleash against a Clipper team that doesn't seem to have anyone who can defend him.
Yeah, going back to this turnover thing for a second. Clippers win the turnover battle 20-7. DJ, what do you think happened there? How do you lose a game where you're plus 13 in the turnover battle?
Yeah, that's tough. I guess a lot of it was because they really weren't. I don't know. They weren't getting into situations to turn over the ball. They were getting in late shot clock situations where they were just having to throw up heaves, mainly because Chris Paul couldn't attack the defense the way that he usually does. So, yeah, they won the turnover battle, but their offense was not nearly getting the quality of looks that they usually do with a healthy Chris Paul.
And it's amazing, DJ, even though everyone in that building knows that Chris Paul's not healthy and everyone watching at home knows he's not healthy, there was a moment late in the third where he went between his legs a few times and got into the paint for the first time all game, when everyone in that place started thinking, it's happening. He's finding that gear. Injured or not, he's going to go to that Chris Paul place. And I think as deflating as anything that happened during that game was the sight of Chris Paul in the fourth kind of being repeatedly denied. You know, he would drive in and just be swarmed and not have that extra quickness that lets him fall away and find that space. And he was just getting packed, which you don't see very often. You know, when Chris Paul gets inside, even though he's a little guy, his shot usually, you know, at least finds the rim. Oh, man. What a frustrating game.
Very frustrating. He got shut down on those few possessions. I agree that he should have been in, because at the 7-minute mark instead of the 5-minute mark or whatever it was, that extra 7-0 run for Memphis was brutal. Totally, you know, swung the game back into their favor. But I think Chris Paul, when he's not right, can protect a lead, but maybe he can't, you know, totally make that, you know, Herculean efforts that we're used to of breaking down a trap. Memphis was just throwing multiple defenders at him, and I don't know, man. There was some really questionable coaching decisions tonight. Foy was just brutal. That was hard to watch. I'm a big Bledsoe fan too, but Foy had played really well towards the end of the regular season, but like you said earlier, Jordan, when he's asked to do something other than spot up and shoot, nights like this can happen. He just imploded tonight, and that was ugly. That was Daniel Ewing-esque throughout a 5-minute period. It was just painful to watch.
It was, and it was such a shame, you know, for Vinny too, in the sense that through 3 quarters, I don't think I was alone in thinking, you know what? Credit to Vinny Del Negro. You know, absolutely, necessity is the mother of invention, but he took this chance and he played that Chris Paul Bledsoe lineup, and he seemed to be finding things that were mixing and matching right. But starting with keeping those reserves in too long, which was so frustrating because, yes, the Clippers ran it up to an 8-point lead, but sometimes games just have feels. They have rhythms. This was a possession game. This was going to come down to 2 points, 4 points if the Clippers were going to win. And so to just let that 8-point lead get back to 1 before calling a timeout was inexplicable to me. It just seemed like such a clear spot to say, let's cash in this 6-point lead and get our starters back in the game and see if we can bring it home. And basically nothing went right from there on out.
Yeah. Jordan, did the refs get out of there safe? At some point, I was worried for their lives of getting out of Staples Center. Was it as bad? It seemed pretty bad on TV that the crowd was getting on them. Was it bad there live?
Oh, it was bad. I mean, the refs "you suck" chants superseded even the Reggie chants by the end as the loudest, most passionate thing that the crowd was saying. And, you know, look, I was there, so it's hard to watch the replays, except the replays they show you, which are usually the ones that are favorable to the home team.
Right.
There were a bunch of questionable calls. Obviously, the Reggie Evans technical for high-fiving Blake Griffin, that's not a traditional interpretation of the technical foul. But, you know, it wasn't so much to me any one foul in the last 6 minutes that seemed so inexcusable, but it was just all these calls that could have gone either way seemed to all be going against the Clippers. It was like playing roulette and just having black turn up every time you bet red.
DJ, we're getting
or any other analogy for something that's 50-50 and happens.
We're getting a lot of ref questions. DJ, do you agree
Yeah,
with
but
Jordan's assessment, having the benefit of replay on television?
oh yeah, definitely. I think I was thinking about this after the game, and the refereeing was definitely frustrating. Coaching decisions were absolutely frustrating, but let's put some of the blame on the players here. They made Tony Allen leaking out to even have that opportunity that looked like a Chris Paul block at the rim, but him leaking out on a make, that's just common stuff where you get mismatched like that, and then it happens again after Foy hits that three at the end of the game where he's just left alone and they dribble out the clock. Like there's just stuff like that just can't happen, and the offensive rebound, Zach Randolph, that one possession getting like 3 or 4 chances, and I think it's silly to put everything on coaching and reffing in this game because honestly, Chris Paul included, the players had more than enough chances to close out this game.
The Zach Randolph offensive rebounds play, DJ, which was something obviously that noticed in the I can't talk tonight. It's tables as well. I think maybe not a lot of focus will go on it, but Blake Griffin's inability to rebound tonight was a huge thing. Whatever explosiveness he lost due to the injury, I thought it showed itself most on the boards, where, Blake's not a great positional rebounder. A lot of his rebounds come from kind of timing it and flying in and leaping above everybody and grabbing it. And if you watch Blake, he would kind of hover around the perimeter of where he thought the scrum for the rebound would develop, and he just wouldn't make his move. He would kind of anticipate making a move and then back away from making a move. And I think a lot, obviously, the Grizzlies have hurt the Clips on the offensive boards all series, but I thought that was a big loss for the Clippers tonight, was Blake's ability to get in there and tussle on the boards.
Yeah, I agree, Jordan. Who do you think, between Blake and Chris, who do you think looked less at full strength?
I would say Chris, in the sense that he seemed much more cautious, much more ginger with the way he was approaching what he thought he could do. Blake seemed more willing to dive on the floor, go into the stands, stop and start suddenly, whereas you could watch Chris Paul treating his body like something he wasn't sure he could trust.
Jordan, would you have advocated just sitting Blake in that second half? It seemed like Blake kind of hit his stride when he dove for that ball that he pried loose from Gasol and then pushed it ahead to DeAndre. After that, like you said, he was a lot more tentative, and that injury was really showing itself in his game. Would you have just sat him down and run with Kenyon Martin and Reggie Evans for the rest of the night?
That is such a tough call to make because those guys give you so little offensively. Reggie Evans' beautiful finish on the pick and roll in the first half notwithstanding. I think my answer would be yes, if only because in addition to all these other problems, Blake was getting eaten up by Zach Randolph, whereas Kenyon Martin was basically not allowing him anything. It was night and day when Kenyon came in terms of Randolph's impact, not so much on the tip-ins and the putbacks, but in terms of actually getting the ball on the block and working against Blake, where he was just eating Blake up at the beginning of the third quarter. There was a little stretch there where the Clippers were actually scoring with their starters, but they couldn't stop the big guys inside. And I think a lot of that came down to Blake being kind of a step slow on everything.
Yeah, he had some decent plays in the second half. I think ultimately, though, if the way that he was playing in the first half, not so much his actual production, but the way he was moving out there, I guess, Vinny would get killed if he didn't play him. I think if the Grizzlies come back and win and Blake is on the bench the whole time, we're probably killing Vinny for that. He had his moments defensively in the fourth quarter. He had a couple turnovers that he created, but I think you got to go with him just for the threat of having him out there offensively that he represents.
So then, DJ, is that what they do come Sunday in Game 7 too? Even with Chris Paul and Blake Griffin, clearly they don't look 100%. You just have to roll with them no matter what?
Yeah, you roll with them and you change the guys around them. I think play more of Bledsoe. Foy, it's very clear, just doesn't. He's not fit for this series. Memphis' wings are too fast, too athletic. They close out too hard, and it's clear that they want to make him a slasher, which he's not. So you put Bledsoe in more, and obviously you sit DeAndre about as much as you have, and roll with Reggie and Kenyon as much as you can, depending on who has the. I guess it's not the hot hand. What do you call like a defensive hot player? Like the hot.
Stopper.
The
Hot
what?
stopper. The hot
The
stop.
the hot stopper. Yeah, I like that. Like the hot pocket. You touch it and it just boils your face off. I think Foy is definitely the guy who needs to see less minutes though. He stretches the floor, yes, but Bledsoe and his ability to penetrate and let Chris play off the ball, which was a huge factor in this game, was Paul being able to spot up, while Bledsoe did a lot of damage on the pick and roll with finding Martin. He had that beautiful bounce pass to Kenyon for an easy dunk, and his work with Reggie. Bledsoe needs to play more in this series. If Charlie Widows is here, I feel he'd be screaming until his face was blue for more Bledsoe. So I think he's absolutely earned the chance in Game 7 to play much more than Foy.
Jordan, how do you feel about rolling with I don't even know what percentage you put on him, 50% Chris Paul and 50% Blake Griffin for Game 7?
There are no other options. I mean, one of the things that's a shame about the fact that we're all going to be talking about the refs and Vinny and Foy stepping on the out-of-bounds line was the bigger story of this game until those late-game collapses was this team is tough. This team is gritty. This team found a way with their two best players, banged up after a season where everyone's just said, look, the Clippers are 2 stars and a bunch of spare parts. Those spare parts found a way to keep this game close, and they almost put this team in the Western Conference semis. And I expect to see that again in Game 7, frankly. Do I think the Clippers are going to win? No, probably not. But I don't think they're going to get run out of the building either. I think they've got to play CP3, and they've got to play Blake, and they've got to have, those guys will give everything they have left. Know that they have a long summer to recover from, non-structural injuries. And I think you just roll it out there and you see if you can make the miracle, finish off the miracle you couldn't quite tonight. And with that said, guys, I'm actually going to jump off because my phone is under 2 minutes of battery.
All right, Jordan, thanks for coming in.
Thanks, Jordan.
All right, I'll talk to you guys after Game 7.
All right.
Just me and you, Andrew.
It's just us now.
Left to commiserate with one another.
So, everyone has been saying all series long that the Clippers have roundly been outplayed, and it's really fortunate that they were up 3-1 at some point in the series.
Yeah.
Did it feel like the Clippers were the better team tonight? Because it felt like they were better for the large majority. I mean, for the first quarter, they weren't the best, but they, like Jordan said, they really won those second and third quarters.
Yeah, they did. Eric Bledsoe and Reggie Evans were a couple of the best players on the floor tonight, and Rudy Gay again was awful and killed the Grizzlies with his shot selection and was taking looks away from Marcus Gasol and Zach Randolph. And I don't know if the Clippers were the better team. I thought they played better. I thought they were definitely hurt. I know we don't like to talk about refereeing very much, and I don't think it's like I said earlier, I think the players were in position to win the game, but they got the rough end of some calls there, and it wasn't the normal, physicality stuff under the rim. It was like just balls going out of bounds and like little, 50-50 balls, and the little things just added up to be too much down the stretch.
Yep. We have a Twitter question from Apostolos. Are Nick Young and Mo Williams hurt? I guess he's assuming because we didn't see a lot of either of them in this game, in terms of production or minutes, I think. What are your thoughts on how they're playing we won't say the series, but at least in this game? Like, could they have been more useful than their minimal production?
Well, Mo is a lot like Foy, and that he's going to have a tough time finding ways to score.
It does seem like Mo could shoot off the dribble though. He does like to do those like quick two-step dribbles and then just pop it, which
He
always
can, but they're all contested.
yeah.
You know, they're all really tough shots, and he's asked to be that guy in the second unit and second quarters, and it's not an enviable position to be in because he's not playing with a lot of good offensive players, and the defense can kind of focus in on him. As far as Nick Young goes, I don't think he really had any opportunities to make a difference in the game. I don't think he got a lot of touches. I don't think he got a lot of minutes. How many minutes did he play tonight?
Nick Young, 16 minutes. Mo Williams, 11. Nick Young,
Wow.
16 minutes is a lot more than I thought.
I would have told you that Mo Williams played a lot more minutes than Nick Young. I guess Young played some down the stretch there, but it's as you coined it, Andrew. It's the 4-shooter, and these guys have to come in and score right away to be effective. Otherwise, they're not going to offer a whole lot else. The one thing about Nick Young is that he can actually defend a position up, which is valuable, but as far as, Foy and Foy and Mo, if they're not scoring, we're not getting anything from them. It's just the way it is.
Yeah. I'm starting to wonder if we should just play the Clippers should just play the jumbo package the entire time because Mo Williams, Randy Foy, they've been great players for the team all season. They've completely shut down out of this series, and it's either going to have to be Nick Young or bigger at the small forward position, and just some combination of Chris Paul and Bledsoe. Well, not the only combination. Chris Paul and Bledsoe in the backcourt. That's it. And you're just trying to. I don't know what the path to victory is for Game 7 with Chris Paul banged up like he is, with Blake Griffin banged up like he is. I actually wonder if Blake Griffin wasn't hurt and Chris Paul was. Everyone always says that Chris Paul is definitely the most important piece of the Clippers, and I don't think any of us would deny that.
Yeah.
But given the way the role players showed up tonight, if Blake Griffin was 100%, the Clippers probably win this game. Don't you think?
Yeah, I do. I think this was their chance, which is why there's such a somber mood, why the air was taken out of Staples, and why I know we're both feeling the way that we are right now is because Game 6 at home, and you had them. They were up 8 in the fourth quarter, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they had them on the ropes, and gosh, it really felt like they could have closed that out. And even though Chris Paul wasn't the guy that he was, you trust him to, take care of the ball and at the very least, get someone a decent look. But he couldn't do that. As much as we praise Paul for everything he's done in fourth quarters this year, he's been fantastic. But I think 2 turnovers, he missed one. He dumped it off and let Blake get fouled once, and Blake made his free throws. But it just wasn't what we're used to seeing. And this whole series has been about Chris Paul in the fourth quarter leading either magnificent runs or getting great shots to close it out. And that didn't happen.
And it's all the little things he does besides just closing the games out for the Clippers. They kept on going back to that one point partway through the fourth quarter when the Clippers were up 8 and the Grizzlies missed that shot. And Reggie Evans and Kenyon Martin both went after the rebound. It popped out, went back to Zach Randolph, and he was able to put it back in, put it back to 6. When Chris Paul is out there, you hear it on the broadcast. He's yelling "same" when he sees 2 people on his team going up, and he wasn't out there to yell it and popped right into the Grizzlies' hands.
I thought the same thing. And then the Foy Butler, there was, gosh, now looking back on it, there were so many easy, unavoidable mistakes. The rebounds on free throws, the getting back on defense, they were cross matched. But gosh, like you gotta pick up the deepest guy and then figure it out once the ball is coming back up court. There were just so many little mistakes, like you said, that added up into something bigger. Here's my biggest fear, Andrew. I'm worried that the Grizzlies figured it out a little bit. They trapped Paul. late on those pick and rolls. They ignored Reggie Evans and Blake Griffin or Kenyon Martin like they should. And offensively, they actually finally ignored Rudy Gay and just ran their stuff and got the ball to Marc Gasol in the high post. I mean, that pass to Zach Randolph from the high post was one of the prettier plays they had all night, and that's just something that they haven't done late in games. So the concern is that Memphis crowd is going to be crazy. Obviously, the Chris and Blake injuries, but even more so, I think Memphis figured out what works for them in the fourth, and that's Marc Gasol. And I don't know that the Clippers have an answer for that.
Despite this terrible, terrible loss, I'm going to disagree and say that they haven't really figured it out.
Okay.
Because how on earth do the Clippers bring it within, I think it was within 4 by halftime after that horrendous first quarter, where, talking about small mistakes that they made, I think they had multiple 2-on-1, 3-on-2 fast breaks in that first quarter that they couldn't convert to anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that was ridiculous. I thought the game was over right there when they couldn't just execute the easiest fast break plays.
I'm not talking second and third quarter though. I'm talking fourth quarter, late game execution.
The thing with fourth quarter is Kenyon Martin is probably the best one-on-one low post defender, but this whole series, it doesn't seem like he's terribly interested in boxing out, rebounding, making the right second or third rotation. So I would, going back to the jumbo package, I'd be a big fan of just playing 3 power forwards or DeAndre Jordan in there and just let them wreak havoc, kind of like a trio of Bledsoes in giant, less athletic bodies, and see what happens there. I mean, it can't hurt at this point because nothing else is happening. And
I think...
Go ahead.
I think we've seen what we're going to see, though, kind of, you know? Like, I thought it was very telling that Vinny went back to his full starting lineup late in the game, because that's who he's played the most, and that's who he trusts.
That's who he's going down with the ship with.
Yeah. I'm having the more I think about it, I'm having a harder and harder time beating up Vinny for this. Foy just fell apart. Yeah, maybe yank him after the first mistake, but gosh, he's a professional. He hasn't done stuff like this all year, and he just multiple plays, just stupid mistakes. Like, I think maybe the pressure of the moment got to him. I mean, this is his first playoff series too. You got to remember. So we talk about Blake being a playoff rookie. Well, so is Randy Foy.
Let me give you reason number 2 why I think the Grizzlies haven't figured it out. And I think this happened in the fourth quarter when Bledsoe and Paul were in there together briefly, and then Vinny pulled Bledsoe out in favor of Foy at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, Bledsoe was running the point a lot, and they put Chris Paul off point. And this goes back further to even when I think was it before Bledsoe came in, or was it before? Anyways, the point is that the Grizzlies put Tony Allen on Chris Paul, as they should, their best perimeter defender, shutting down the hobbled point guard star for the Clippers. But the Clippers just decided, okay, well then Mike Conley has to be guarding someone, and we're just going to put that person in the post and let them score. I think Randy Foy posted up Conley twice and he scored. Then they switched back, and then Bledsoe came in for Foy, and Conley was guarding Chris Paul. And Chris Paul, as limited as he might be, was still able to get clean looks from off of Mike Conley and was able to score. Then the Grizzlies made the third adjustment of bringing a second person over onto whoever Mike Conley was guarding. And if that person's going to be Chris Paul, I trust that Chris Paul is going to be able to find the open person. He doesn't need to break that trap.
Yeah, but who are the open people that he's finding?
Well, if you're putting... if Gasol's rotating over, then what? It's going to be Reggie Evans wide open under the rim, or
foul.
Kenyon Martin wide open under the rim. I'm fine. I'm fine with them fouling too, because what ends up happening is we get 4 minutes of Haddadi, who's secretly been killing the Clippers the 3 minutes that he's in all of these games because he's just so long. I don't even know how is Haddadi and Evans swinging this series.
That was bizarre seeing him come into the game, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's.
And Gilbert Arenas too. I was looking at my TV. I was like, "Is that Gilbert? That is like, what the heck is he doing out here?" Hollins is like Vinny plus. I said this at the beginning of the series. He's like, he does all the same things that Vinny does and motivates and gets his team to play hard. Except he's just a little bit better. I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm gonna start throwing stuff, man. This loss has got me PO'd.
There's not a lot that makes sense out of any of this game. This game was like the entire series in a microcosm. Just what is going on with any of this? So, yeah, DJ game 7. What are there's a lot of tweets that are expecting a blowout because if Chris Paul and Blake Griffin look this limited now, 1.5 days isn't gonna fix anything. On top of that, Game 7 is a noontime local start. I was hearing. So they don't even get the benefit of the other extra 6 or 7 hours of a night game. What do you think? Is this it? Nice season next year.
Gosh, it felt like I was watching it towards the end with the little mistakes, the painful mistakes, and the guard being in the game that shouldn't have been in the game. It just felt like that Phoenix series all over again, didn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And it feels like Game 7 is going back, to that Phoenix Game 7 where it's like, shoot, that was the shot. When you have a team on the ropes like that, you got to finish them. So I'm not ultra confident going into Game 7. I would be if Chris Paul was healthy. I would say, look, the best player wins this series. But Paul was a shell of himself tonight. He didn't drive. He didn't penetrate. He wasn't able to do his crossovers and his moves, and like we saw tiny little flashes like that. It's just not there, man. It's just not there for him.
I'm gonna say that Evans is probably reliable at what he contributes to the Clippers at this point because it seems like every game in this series he's done what he's been expected to do. Play reasonable defense, have active hands, and rebound the ball like crazy. Do you think Bledsoe can have another performance like tonight?
Absolutely. Yeah.
They would, as crazy as it sounds, Bledsoe and Evans were the two key players for the Clippers tonight. So I think if we can get Bledsoe and Evans going again, then maybe we can dust off Chris Paul's hip flexor for 4 minutes and get that victory.
Do you see a blowout for either team?
No, I don't. Yeah. I don't see a blowout. I'm completely convinced that the Grizzlies do not play a brand of basketball that can blow anyone out. They can blow bad teams out, but if you're in the playoffs, you're not a bad team.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think it's gonna be tight and just speaking of Phoenix, can we borrow their trainers for like a few days and have like a Grant Hill resurgence for Blake and Chris Paul?
Indeed.
That would help.
What
are we missing? Are we missing anything? Have we missed? Did we cover everything?
We covered everything. I made this one note that said that when Bledsoe was running the point and Paul was the off guard, it's kind of what we expected the Chris Paul Chauncey Billups backcourt to be, with Billups just kind of sitting there spotting up to shoot shots and maybe like taking advantage of a physically inferior player that was guarding him and letting the point guard kind of slash and do all of that stuff. It didn't really work out that way, but I think going into the season, that's kind of what we were thinking.
Yeah, it's a similar vibe. It was weird to see Chris Paul not initiating the offense, wasn't it? It was weird to see Bledsoe bringing it up and calling for those high screens, and while Chris wasn't even involved in the play. This is the reality of the situation, though. I mean, it's unfortunate that the Clippers caught this bad break. I mean, any other team gets its It's not on Chicago's level, obviously, because Derrick Rose, but they lost their two best players, Derrick Rose and Joakim Noah, and that was highly unlucky, and the same thing is happening to the Clippers right now. Which just makes you think, Chicago, okay, I know they have the Bulls things, but there's curses in Chicago, and there's curses in Clippers land, and this is all for nothing. Destiny has already been decided.
I think that as bad as this may seem for the Clippers, it's probably preferable to what happened to Portland this year and the last who knows how many years, with all of their star players going down permanently, not even temporarily.
Yeah, you just hope that Chris Paul can somehow get healthy and right, and that he can bring it home, because the Clippers aren't going to go. The Clippers aren't going to go away from Chris Paul when he's on the court. It's going to be on him. He's getting the ball, whether in ISO or a high pick and roll. And like we said, we think the game's going to be tight. It's going to come down to that. One of the best perimeter defenders in Tony Allen versus one of the best shot creators in basketball in Chris Paul. I mean, I guess if you want to look at the positive side, if you're a Clippers fan, you probably wouldn't want to have it any other way. You want the ball in Chris Paul's hands, and he's going to get it. We'll see what he can do.
That's fantastic, because I was going to say something positive as we wind this this feed down. So
have faith. Chris Paul is still on the Clippers basketball team. Have some faith, people.
For DJ Foster, I'm Andrew Hahn. See you Game 7. Thanks for tuning in.